archival hall of the Galactic Academy glimmered with the soft hum of starlight refracted through crystalline walls. This was where the most brilliant minds of the Zelvar Coalition convened, a race that had mastered the intricacies of genetic perfection, quantum dominion, and the meticulous art of subjugation. Their advanced intellects made them arbiters of lesser civilizations, and they bore this mantle with pride, though not without arrogance. Before them floated a holographic representation of Earth, the so-called Deathworld, that had defied classification within the Coalition's vast database. A hushed murmur rippled through the assembly as Overseer Zinthal, a being with an aura of calculated dominance, addressed his peers. "This world," he began, his voice resonating in measured tones, "is an anomaly, teeming with species shaped by extreme environments. And yet the dominant sentient life forms, these humans, display a curious contradiction. They lack physical advantages. Their technology is primitive by our standards, and their societies are fragmented." A ripple of laughter echoed, the sound cold and dismissive. Zinthal raised a clawed appendage to silence them. "And yet," he continued, "they have survived countless cataclysms, even thriving where extinction should have claimed them. This warrants study. And, perhaps, caution." The murmurs ceased. The Zelvar prided themselves on their predictive models, but Earth had proven resistant to easy categorization. A decision was made. The humans would be tested, their resilience broken, their place in the galactic order firmly established. As the assembly disbanded, Zinthal observed the planet's hologram with quiet curiosity. Surely the human survival was a fluke, an aberration to be corrected. But beneath his veneer of confidence lay a faint, unspoken unease. Beneath the storm-laden skies of Earth, Commander Elena Reyes stood at the edge of a sprawling refugee camp, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The makeshift settlement teemed with activity. Engineers cobbling together defensive turrets from salvaged machinery, medics tending to the injured, and children carrying supplies with a quiet determination that belied their age. Humanity's last stronghold was nothing more than a fractured patchwork of survival, and yet there was something unyielding in the air. Alina's comm device crackled. "Commander Reyes, satellite feeds confirm an incoming Zelvar fleet. ETA 48 hours. She exhaled sharply, her jaw tightening. 2 weeks ago, the Zelvar Coalition had announced their arrival, veiling their intentions behind a facade of diplomacy. It's... Their ultimatum had followed soon after. Earth would submit to Coalition governance or face annihilation. Knowing surrender meant subjugation, humanity had chosen resistance. 2. Elena turned to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Amir Patel, who stood nearby with a datapad. "Status report. Shields are at 30% capacity, and our orbital cannons are barely operational," Amir said grimly. "But the research teams at Black Site Echo have made progress, if we can stall the Zelvar long enough." "If," Elena echoed, her voice hard but resolute. "That's all we've got now. If humanity's weaknesses were glaringly apparent. Against the Zelvar's advanced technologies, vessels capable of erasing continents, soldiers engineered for perfection, Earth's cobbled-together defenses seemed laughable. Their only advantage lay in their unpredictability, a trait the Zelvar dismissed as irrelevant chaos. Yet beneath the veneer of disarray was a fierce resolve. These were people who had weathered pandemics, wars, and environmental collapse. They had faced extinction not as a distant possibility, but as a lived reality. And every time, they had adapted. Elena knew this better than most. Her parents had been among the first responders during the lunar crisis, when Earth's moon was destabilized by an asteroid impact. She'd grown up on stories of sacrifice and ingenuity, of humanity's ability to endure the unthinkable. "We've got 48 hours to rewrite the odds," she said, her voice rising with defiance. "If the Zelvar think we'll roll over, they're in for a rude awakening." The camp echoed with cheers as her words rippled through the air. Across the settlement, people took heart, their despair giving way to determination. Humanity's fight wasn't just about survival. It was about proving, once again, that they were far more than the sum of their weaknesses. They were survivors, innovators, fighters, and soon, the Zelvar would learn this truth the hard way. The Zelvar fleet descended upon Earth like a storm of fire and precision, their shimmering ships gliding through the atmosphere with an eerie grace. From their vantage point, aboard the Vorethal Apex, Supreme Commander Thakarn observed the chaos with a quiet satisfaction. "Deploy ground forces," he ordered, his voice calm and measured. "Human resistance will crumble within hours." On Earth's surface, the battle began in earnest. Zelvar drop pods rained from the sky, each one housing squads of genetically enhanced soldiers. They moved with a terrifying efficiency, sweeping through the outskirts of human settlements, dismantling defenses with calculated precision. To the Zelvar, this was a simple operation, subjugation by the numbers. Yet, as their forces pushed inward, cracks began to form in their expectations. Near the ruins of a once thriving city, a small group of human resistance fighters prepared an ambush. From the tellers, who claimed to hold the answers, they drew on their planned allies. Near the ruins of a once thriving city, a small group of human resistance fighters prepared an ambush. Commander Elena Reyes crouched behind a crumbling wall, her breath steady despite the chaos around her. Beside her, Lieutenant Amir Patel double-checked the makeshift explosives they had planted. "They're coming," Amir whispered, glancing at the incoming Zelvar troops through binoculars. "Hold," Elena ordered, her voice calm. The Zelvar soldiers advanced, their formation flawless, but as they passed a seemingly insignificant pile of rubble, the ground erupted beneath them. She felt that the explosion sent several of them sprawling, their advanced armor dented and scorched. Before they could regroup, human snipers hidden in the ruins opened fire, targeting the weak points in their armor. Elena led the charge, her team surging forward with a ferocity that belied their smaller numbers. Using salvaged weapons and guerrilla tactics, they overwhelmed the disoriented Zelvar troops. In orbit, Thakarn frowned as reports of unexpected resistance filtered in. "Humans are using primitive tactics," one of his officers reported, "yet they are inflicting casualties." Far from the battlefield, a team of engineers and scientists worked frantically in an underground bunker known as Black Site Echo. The facility buzzed with energy as they attempted to reverse engineer a captured Zelvar drone. "This tech is centuries ahead of ours," muttered Dr. Lena Park, the lead scientist. "If the Zelvar succeeded in overthrowing us, we find themselves overrun, then spread to the world. But their systems have a flaw: rigidity. They don't adapt well to external tampering." She pointed to a holographic schematic of the drone's core. "If we can upload a viral program into their communication network, we might be able to disrupt their coordination." The team worked tirelessly, repurposing human satellites to transmit the virus. Despite the Zelvar's technological superiority, their overconfidence had left them vulnerable to an unconventional attack. On the ground, the Zelvar soldiers began to notice a pattern. Humans were not fighting like a cohesive force. They were fragmented, unpredictable, and chaotic. Yet this very chaos disrupted the Zelvar's calculated strategies. In one skirmish, a group of Zelvar soldiers pursued a retreating human squad into a dense forest. What they didn't anticipate was the humans' use of the environment, traps made from sharpened debris and concealed pits. Traps made from sharpened debris and concealed pits turned the forest into a deadly maze. "This is illogical," one Zelvar commander muttered as he observed his troops' dwindling numbers. "How can such primitive tactics be effective?" The answer eluded him. Humans, with their lack of advanced technology, were supposed to be predictable, but they weren't. On another front, a small human village had been surrounded by Zelvar forces. Among the villagers was a young woman named Marisol, who had managed to communicate with a captured Zelvar scout. Zith, the alien, named Vorthik, had been injured during the initial skirmish and was abandoned by his unit. "You're not like them," Marisol said softly, tending to Vorthik's wounds despite the protests of her fellow villagers. "You are foolish," Vorthik replied, wincing as she applied a salve. "Why help an enemy?" "Because we're not enemies." Marisol said, "Not really. We're just surviving." Over time, Vorthik began to see humanity in a different light. Their actions were not driven solely by aggression, but by a deep-seated will to protect each other. When the Zelvar forces finally breached the village's defenses, it was Vorthik who relayed critical information to Marisol, helping the humans escape to safety. In orbit, the viral program unleashed by Black Site Echo began to take effect. It was this fortitude that helped the humans get through the tumultuous fight. Zelvar ships lost communication with their ground forces, their formations breaking apart as confusion spread. On the battlefield, humans capitalized on the disarray. Alina's forces launched coordinated strikes, using the Zelvar's own weapons against them. In one particularly daring maneuver, a human pilot named Darius commandeered a damaged Zelvar walker, turning its formidable weaponry on its creators. "It is not possible," the Karn muttered, his calm demeanor fracturing. "How can these primitives outmaneuver us?" The turning point came during a massive engagement at the edge of Earth's largest remaining city. The Zelvar unleashed their most powerful war machines, towering mechs armed with energy cannons. Humanity's forces, battered and outgunned, seemed doomed. But then, the humans did something the Zelvar couldn't anticipate. They fought together, blending their ingenuity and resilience into a single, cohesive strategy. Alina led a daring assault, coordinating with Black Site Echo to target the mech's power cores. Meanwhile, Marisol and Vorthik convinced a group of disillusioned Zelvar soldiers to defect, further tipping the balance. As the battle raged on, the Zelvar forces found themselves overwhelmed, not by superior firepower, but by the sheer determination of humanity. By the time the dust settled, the battlefield was a stark contrast to the Zelvar's initial projections. Their forces lay in disarray, their ships retreating to orbit. On the ground, humans stood united, their makeshift defenses battered but unbroken. In orbit, the Khan watched in stunned silence as his fleet withdrew. Quote, for the first time, he felt something unfamiliar, a flicker of doubt. "They are not as we believe them to be," he admitted quietly. "They are something else." Humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and empathy had reshaped the battlefield, leaving the Zelvar questioning everything they thought they knew. The Zelvar fleet hovered in low orbit, their massive flagship, Vorethal Apex, casting a shadow over Earth's battered surface. Supreme Commander Thaw Karn stood at the Central Command dais, his expression grim. Reports from the ground painted a picture he never thought possible. Humans were not only surviving, but pushing back. "Prepare the singularity cannon," he commanded. His voice cut through the tense silence of the bridge. "If humanity insists on resisting, we will remind them why the Zelvar dominate the stars." The singularity cannon, a devastating weapon capable of collapsing entire continents, charged with the deep its power core glowing with an ominous light. This was not merely a weapon, it was a statement, a final demonstration of Zelvar's supremacy. On the ground, Commander Elena Reyes stared up at the glowing light in the sky, a sinking feeling settling in her gut. "What are we looking at?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rising panic around her. "Jimma," Dr. Lena Park's voice crackled over the comms from Blacksite Echo. "It's bad, really bad. They're charging some kind of planetary weapon. If they fire it, we're done." Elena clenched her fists. "Options?" Lena hesitated. "1. We've pinpointed the cannon's power source. It's drawing energy from the core of their flagship. If we can disrupt it, the weapon will overload. But what? It's a suicide mission," Lena admitted. "Whoever goes up there won't be coming back." "I know you're tired, but this is it. Our final chance to show them who we are." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "They think we're weak, disorganized, primitive. But they don't understand what it means to be human. They don't understand our resilience, our ingenuity, our love for each other." Her voice grew stronger. "Today, we fight, not because we want to, but because we must, for our families, our future, our planet. Whatever happens next, let them remember this day. Let them remember humanity." Cheers erupted across the comm channels. Elena turned to her team. "Suit up. We're taking the fight to them." Single Zelvar dropship, hijacked by human engineers, hurtled toward the Vorthal apex. Elena, along with a small team of elite fighters, prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Among them was Marisol, who had convinced Vorthik to join the effort. The alien scout, now fully aligned with humanity's cause, provided critical intelligence on the flagship's layout. As the dropship approached the docking bay, alarms blared. Zelvar troops swarmed the area, their weapons raised. "Go low loud," Lena shouted. The humans stormed out, their movements swift and coordinated. Using scavenged Zelvar weapons and their own guerrilla tactics, they pushed through the heavily guarded corridors. Vorthik led the way, guiding them toward the cannon's power core. "This way," he barked, his voice urgent. Inside the power core chamber, the air hummed with energy. The room was dominated by a massive crystalline structure, pulsating with a dangerous glow. Elena were in position. "How do we shut this thing down?" "You'll need to overload the core manually," Lena replied. "But once you start, you'll only have minutes before the entire ship goes up." Lena nodded. "Understood. Team, set the charges." Her team worked. Zelvar reinforcements poured into the chamber. The humans fought valiantly, holding the line as Marisol and Vorthik planted the explosives. "Elena!" Marisol called out. "Chargers are assessit." "Good," Lena replied. "Everyone fall back." "No." Before they could retreat, a massive figure entered the chamber. Supreme Commander Thakarn himself stepped forward, his armor gleaming, his eyes burning with fury. "You dare defile my ship?" Thakarn growled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. Elena stepped forward, her weapon raised. "We dare to fight for what's ours." Thakarn laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "You are brave, human. But bravery without strength is meaningless." He charged, his movements impossibly fast. Alina barely dodged as his blade sliced through the air. The two engaged in a fierce battle, their clashes echoing through the chamber. "You think your species is special?" Karn sneered. "You are nothing but insects to us." Lena gritted her teeth, blocking another strike. "And yet, here we are, making you bleeding." In a sudden burst of strength, she disarmed Karn, her weapon aimed at his chest. But instead of pulling the trigger, she paused. "Leave," she said. "Take your fleet and go. If you don't, you won't live to regret it." Karn stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, he stepped back. "You are a fascinating species," he said. "Perhaps. I underestimated you." "I'll do that," she said, her voice trembling. "Get to the dropship. I'll finish this." "No," Irina protested. "We do this together." "Elena," Lena's voice cut through the comms. "We're out of time. If you don't overload the core now, it's all over." Lena smiled, a sad but determined look in her eyes. "Go. That's an order." Reluctantly, her team complied, retreating to the dropship. Elena approached the core, her hand steady as she activated the overload sequence. As the countdown began, she spoke softly into the comms. "For Earth. Here." Varethal Apex erupted in a blinding explosion, the shock wave visible even from the planet's surface. The singularity cannon, deprived of its power source, fizzled and died. In orbit, the remaining Zelvar ships hesitated, their confidence shattered. Then, one by one, they began to retreat, leaving Earth skies clear for the first time in weeks. On the ground, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defeated an enemy far superior in strength and technology. But the cost had been great. As the survivors gathered to honor those who had fallen, Marisol stood at the forefront, her gaze fixed on the stars. "She saved us," she said quietly. "She showed them who we really are." And in that moment, humanity stood united, their resilience, ingenuity, and empathy shining brighter than ever. The wreckage of the Vorethal Apex still smoldered in orbit, a haunting reminder of the battle that had reshaped the galaxy's balance of power. Among the remaining Zelvar fleet, silence hung heavy as the surviving ships limped away from Earth. Supreme Commander Theokarn sat alone in his private chamber, aboard the retreating vessel, Vorethon Sentinel. His normally proud posture weighed down. Humility. Before him, a holographic projection of Earth rotated slowly, its surface scarred but vibrant. Theokarn's clawed hand hovered over the controls, as if he were tempted to crush the image in frustration. Instead, he deactivated the display and leaned back, exhaling deeply. They were not supposed to survive, he muttered. Theokarn replayed the events in his mind, the humans' ingenuity, their unyielding spirit, and above all, their willingness to sacrifice for one another. They had faced overwhelming odds. With technology that was laughably primitive compared to the Zelvar arsenal, yet they had succeeded in ways his species could not have anticipated. For centuries, the Zelvar had believed strength came from superiority, advanced technology, vast fleets, and flawless strategies. Yet these humans had demonstrated a strength of a different kind, an ability to adapt, to endure, to form connections even in the face of annihilation. The Supreme Commander's musings were interrupted by the arrival of his chief advisor, Creel. The advisor bowed deeply before speaking. "Supreme Commander, the Council demands an explanation for our failure. They will expect you to justify our retreat." Karn waved a hand dismissively. "Let them demand what they will. They do not understand what we faced. Humans, Creel spat, the word dripping with contempt. Species. No, the Khan replied, his tone sharp. Not savage. Something far more dangerous. Resilient. Clever. United in ways we cannot co-comprehend. Riel hesitated. What does this mean for the Zelvar Supreme Co-Commander? Hakan rose, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. It means we must rethink everything. Humanity is not a threat to be eliminated, but a force to be reckoned with. And if we fail to adapt, they will outpace us, not in strength, but in influence. In Earth, the mood was both somber and triumphant. Cities lay in ruins, and the cost of victory was immeasurable. But humanity had survived. More than that, they had proven their worth, not just to themselves, but to the galaxy at large. At Black Site Echo, the surviving leaders of Earth's resistance gathered to honor those who had fallen. A large hologram displayed Commander Elena Reyes, her image glowing softly in the dimly lit chamber. Marisol stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. Elena gave everything for us, for Earth. She believed in what we could achieve together, even when the odds seemed impossible. She showed us that being human means more than just surviving. It means standing up for each other, no matter the coast. The room erupted in applause, but it was tinged with grief. Those who had fought alongside Elena felt the weight of her absence keenly. Yet her sacrifice had ignited a fire in their hearts. Beyond Earth, the galaxy buzzed with the news of the Zelvar's defeat. Across countless worlds, species that had lived in fear of the Zelvar began to reconsider their place in the cosmos. For years, the Zelvar had been an unchallenged force, their dominance unquestioned, but now whispers of humanity spread like wildfire. Section 22. A species from the so-called Deathworld, fragile in appearance but unbreakable in spirit, had defied the impossible. On distant planets, resistance movements found inspiration in Earth's victory. Alien leaders debated whether to seek alliances with humanity, recognizing their potential as allies or their danger as enemies. In the ruins of New Paris, Marisol and Vorthik stood on a massive reconstruction effort. Human and alien workers labored side by side, clearing debris and rebuilding what had been lost. "You could have left," Marisol said, glancing at Vorthik. "Gone back to your people. Why stay?" Vorthik tilted his head, his voice contemplative. "I have spent my life serving a species that values power above all else. But here, among humans, I have seen something different. Something worth protecting." Arasal smiled faintly. "You're one of us, Nana." "I suppose I am," Vorthik said. "Though your ways are strange and unpredictable, that's what makes us human," Marisol replied. "We find a way, even when there isn't on one's." They watched the workers. A faint rainbow formed in the sky, a symbol of hope amid the devastation. Weeks later, Earth broadcasted a message to the galaxy, a declaration of their place among the stars. "This is a message from the people of Earth," Marisol's voice echoed across interstellar frequencies. "We are not the strongest, nor the most advanced, but we are resilient, we are innovative, and we are ready to work together with any species willing to seek peace and progress." The message resonated in unexpected ways. For the first time, species that had once ignored humanity began to respond. Ambassadors arrived, treaties were discussed, and alliances began to form. Species resonated in unexpected ways. Ambassadors arrived. Species resonated in unexpected ways. The first time, species that had once existed appeared to recognize each other. Humanity's scars from the Zelvar invasion would take decades to heal, but they had gained something far more valuable, a place in the galaxy, earned not through conquest, but through perseverance and unity. From the bridge of the Varithan Sentinel, Takarn listened to the broadcast. He sat in silence for a long moment, then turned to Creel. "Send a message to the Council," he said. "Tell them, humanity is not to be underestimated. They may be our greatest challenge, or our greatest allies." The Zelvar fleet disappeared into the void. Takarn allowed himself a faint smile. For the first time in centuries, he felt something he had thought long forgotten: hope. Humanity had survived its trial by fire, emerging stronger and more united than ever. And in the vast, uncharted expanse of the galaxy, their story was only just beginning.